This is Classroom Hacks bonus content for the evolution and longevity episode titled It's My First Day. And we have a special guest here with us today with Kerry Nguyen, who is an old-time friend of mine. So Kerry, much like myself, we both did not start off in the field of education, yet somehow ended up teaching. It's an interesting sort of turn of events from that. And why we have her on today is because she teaches both high school and now is a recently hired instructor over at St. Francis University. So she actually teaches both high school and college. So we wanted to have someone who can sort of speak about the trials and tribulations of the process, and maybe later on in the year we can ask her how things are going over at the university. So give people out there a short introduction, and then I'll give you some rapid fire questions and so the audience can get to know you.
I didn't start off in education. I started off in the science field and the health field, actually. I sold drugs. I tell people I sell drugs. I was a pharmacy technician for a long time for a big retail pharmacy out there. I did that for a number of years. And then I moved on to the insurance side of that business. Did that for a few years. And then I decided to teach somewhere in between there. I wanted to teach because I wanted to not be able to say no to people when they gave me ideas. In the business world, you do things a certain way with certain clients or certain contracts, and you have to do it this way. And if there's new ideas, you have to push it along instead of, taking it as a team effort instead of just doing it as, through the business end. So I wanted to be able to give more opportunities to people when they had more ideas, and I feel I could do that more in the classroom than I could in the business world. So there I am. I'm teaching, first year teaching. It's been great so far.
You're still alive, which is
alive.
Yeah, which is remarkable.
And I don't hate it yet. Hopefully, I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, well, I think it takes a while for people to become jaded with their job, and I think it also deals with a sense of complacency, and I think that goes with any job. You don't mix it up. It's easy to start resenting what you do, but you're still fresh, and you're still good. Let's do some short rapid-fire questions so people just don't think
Let's do it.
You are just some automated machine that
I am a bot.
Yeah, a bot that I just
I get
program.
that sometimes.
But she's right. I promise you she is a real person, and she does mean well. So first and foremost, favorite color?
Red.
Here's one you might not get often. Favorite number?
10.
Why 10?
It's my birthday.
I guess people will often go with that.
Or 7, I guess. Lucky 7.
Yeah. Both being Asian, we our people say that 7 is a good number. Last movie or show you watched, and how did you like it?
I liked Peaky Blinders. I liked it because it had it was gang oriented and it was gambling oriented. Some of my two favorite things. No, I'm kidding. I like gambling, of course, but I also like kind of the loyalty of being in a family where if you ask someone to do something for you, no questions asked. I also like characters in the show doing something for their family, but they don't know they're doing it for them. And sometimes they feel betrayed by not knowing it, but the other person's doing it out of love.
You never go against the family.
Never go against the family.
Last question for rapid fire here is: you go to sleep one night, and the next morning you wake up in any place, fictional or real. Where are you, and what is the first thing you do?
Where am I? I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is beach, only because we've been living in Chicago through this winter, and all I want to do is just see the sun. But I feel like I should have a more interesting answer. I don't know if I want to be in space. I don't know if I want to be in the water, underground, in the ocean. I don't know if I want to be in ancient times or in the future or in prehistoric times or in different dimensions.
I mean, each has its advantages. And disadvantages. You brought up space. The first thing I thought of was that movie Passengers with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence.
I didn't watch that movie.
It was actually pretty interesting. The end kind of gets a little cliche, but the rest is interesting. You wake up on a ship, you don't understand why you're there. I actually saw this question on Facebook where they gave you like 12 different the months of the year and said if you were born this month, you wake up in Hogwarts, or you wake up in Westeros, or you
I
wake
like
up
that.
in, Jupiter. And so that's why I said fictional or real. And that makes it even harder. So
Yeah.
it's one of those questions where you might not be able just to answer it on the fly.
I think I would want to be, if a place where I would want to be is on, I think it's Jupiter's moon. What is it? Europa? The frozen moon. It's frozen on the outside, but it's supposed to be liquid on the inside. I think I'd want to go there.
And what's the first thing you would do if you're there? And
See if
obviously
there's
able to-
life.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd be terrified if I was just out in space. I woke up and it was just the vast darkness.
Well, I would have to know that I was on Europa. If
Right,
I just
right,
woke up
sure.
in the middle underwater, then
Yeah.
it would be a problem.
Yeah, obviously, the question needs a little tweaking. All right, so that was some rapid fire. Obviously, you see now that Kerry is a real person. And one of the other reasons why it was important for us to have her on the show is because Peter and I obviously come from liberal arts backgrounds. Kerry is bio. And something you might not often hear with different instructors and teachers, maybe from the math field or science, is, well, we don't necessarily always have as much flexibility. However, after sitting in one of Kerry's classes, even going on a field trip with one of her classes, it was awesome to see some of the work she did, especially with the students and how she was able to get them engaged. So if anything, as we always say this podcast can do, will hopefully give you some advice and insight. But before we get into that, I think we kind of covered this in your intro, but if there's anything you might have missed, question one was, you came from a bio background with a pharmacy direction. Why and what changed your mind, and especially to go towards teaching and not anything else?
The pharmacy field was something that I defaulted to, actually. When in high school, what I wanted to do was actually make medicine, manufacture medicine, research how to cure diseases. And I thought that pharmacy was that way to go for me. I thought that's what you would do to get into the drug field. I was wrong, obviously. But, as a first-generation student, or a first generation of my family, there wasn't really a lot of direction on what to do with that. So I thought pharmacy was a good thing. I thought it was going to help change the world, help change people's lives. But when I got into it, it wasn't as glamorous as I thought it was. It was more numbers driven, more how fast you can get things done, how many patients can you get in, how many prescriptions can you fill, could you push these MTMs, medication therapy management programs, to these people. You got to remind people to pick up their drugs, you got to remind people to fill their drugs. So it wasn't very as glamorous. I wasn't helping people to the degree that I thought I would be. And I decided to do teaching because, like I said before, business is always it's very linear, I think, as far as it's the same all the time. Sometimes it changes or improves and you feel like you're helping someone, but most of the time I felt like I wasn't. I thought that teaching would be better to do that, to give more opportunities, to have a wider sphere of influence for people in science.
Was it ever anything other than teaching that you decided after?
Business, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's
was
right, I
either
remember that.
going to be business or teaching. To be honest with you, I think I decided teaching just because I could have the whole summer off.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that's going to be true. I'll probably still work in the summer.
That's absolutely true. What were some of the biggest hurdles you faced when you began this journey? Was it the schooling you went through, finding a job, the actual process of converting your mind to become a teacher?
I don't know that I had struggles, but nothing where I couldn't overcome it. Like we discussed, I have 4 preps now, which is a lot, in all fields of courses that it's not even my background. My background is molecular biology. I teach AP environmental science, regular environmental science, astronomy, and intro to physical science. These classes have nothing to do with biology. Well, it doesn't follow the same course schedule as life science and biology, what people are normally used to when you think about life sciences. So all of the stuff that I have to kind of learn myself or refresh before I teach my students. So that's one of the struggles that I had to overcome. I don't know. There's just things that you just have to do it. There's no complaining. I worked full-time in grad school. Worked full-time and I went to school part-time. Got straight A's, 4.0 GPA, still made money, still went to work 40 plus hours a week and did grad school. It's just something that, if you want to do it, you have to do it. Just, you do it. It wasn't anything that I really felt like, oh man, this is really hard or anything like that.
How were you feeling the night before your first day, and how much prepping did you do?
First day of school this year, don't know that I did that much prep work, to be honest with you. First day of classes for me was mostly like, here, let's introduce yourselves, let's get to know each other, and then maybe we did some kind of introductory lesson, like intro to the course. So maybe I did do some prep work. I just didn't realize it was so far ago.
Even though it really wasn't. It seems
so long ago, but like, it was in August. So
yeah.
No, I can't remember if I did. I must have done some prep because I didn't know anything about any of the stuff. So I probably had to have looked at all the textbooks and see what I wanted to do. I probably had to work out the scheduling for the year. Make syllabuses. Oh yeah, I had to make syllabuses for the year. I didn't have to make any formal lesson plans and show them to anyone. That's different from my student teaching to being a first-year real teacher. I didn't have to show anyone my lesson plans, and I didn't have to have anyone check that off. So that was good. That took some time off for me. Gave me some more time.
Yeah, then that actually will transition into our next question. But before we get into that, the night before, because I know that the night before my first day, I was a bit apprehensive and I was anxious because I didn't know what to expect. This is the first time I'm speaking in front of 20, 25 kids, and I didn't know, like, I think I thought about, are they going to like me? Are they going to care? Who knows all this stuff? Did you have any of those feelings? Or
I didn't. I have this joke with myself that teachers just like to hear themselves talk.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's somewhat true.
Somewhat true. So I don't mind talking to people. I don't mind talking with new people, and I don't mind getting to know people. So it was all very exciting for me. I wasn't very nervous or apprehensive about if, like, oh, they're going to like me. Are they going to hate me? Is my class going to go? Is it going to go down in burning flames? Is it going to go well? I didn't have any of those thoughts. It's just an exciting time to, like, get to know, like, 200 new kids.
Mm-hmm. So you were more excited than nervous.
I was more excited than nervous.
How would you describe your expectations versus the reality of what it was? Because obviously, when we're in grad school, at least I can speak from my grad school experience. I can't necessarily speak from yours, but we didn't get much pedagogy or teaching. We had a lot of just theory. We didn't get very many practical sort of discussions. Was it something when you're kind of thrown out into the field? Is it different than maybe what you were expecting from what you saw in class or what you learned in school?
I think I had a different experience because I had a student teaching experience,
Mm-hmm.
Where I was kind of exposed to all of that and had a mentor who... and it was good. When I started student teaching, I did the second semester, which was, I think, more beneficial than if I started off at the beginning of the school year. Coming in the middle of it, those mentor teachers had already established a classroom culture and a classroom environment that I was expected to maintain. So you walk in, kids are gathering in, bell rings, I walk in, they should have attention on me. They should be ready for class, they should be excited for class, they should be excited about what I got to hear, what we're doing today, they should be psyched. I think that's still the same for my classrooms now. What I would like to improve in my classrooms is probably the getting into it. You know, you're supposed to teach bell to bell, and it's supposed to be all content all the time. But I don't find myself doing that. I get in, you know, if it's Monday, I'm going to ask them, you know, how was your weekend? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to know. It's just not, it's like, you don't want to come and say, all right, let's get to it, and not get to know your students and not have them feel like you don't care about what happened to their life outside of school.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it to be, like, perfect. So I think that helped with any kind of other expectations that I may have. I don't expect my class to be quiet. I don't like my classes to be quiet. I like them to be engaged and thinking and asking questions and asking each other questions and having discussions about whatever we're talking to, and maybe even what we're not talking about. But at least we're having a discussion that's educational and meaningful, and it gets them thinking. So if we go off on tangents sometimes, I'm okay with that for a little bit. We'll get back to what we're really talking about. But if it gets them interested and it gets other people engaged in it, I'll allow it.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. One of my initial expectations was that I would not be doing all the talking like I experienced with many of my college professors. From the jump, I'm like, you guys are going to talk a lot, we're going to talk a lot, but I'm not going to sit up here and lecture you for an hour, 2 hours. I don't even.
Yeah, I don't like
minutes.
doing that either. I don't like talking to my class for, like, sometimes we'll have to have lecture days. It blows. Because I hate, like, just standing up there and talking to them. talking to them instead of talking with them.
Right.
I hate that the most. But sometimes they just need the background knowledge, and the quickest way to do it in the short amount of time that we have is just for me to put it up on the board, and they're going to take notes on it, and that's how they'll have their background information. But I dread those days the most. I tell them, sorry guys, today is going to be a notes lecture day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to get through as fast as we can so we can get on to other exciting stuff.
Would you say there's anything different from what you learned about teaching opposed to what you actually teach, the way you actually teach?
Yeah, I felt the way I was taught, it was more, I think it's just to help people time manage and set up their classroom to get all the information in there. I think my scheduling is a lot more flexible than that. I'm not concerned if I don't finish that lesson in that day. It's just going to go over the next day. Sometimes that's just how it works. I don't fuss about it. I'm not worried about that. I know some people are like, oh, we didn't get through all we needed to get through today. It's okay. We're going to get through it tomorrow, the next day, next class. We didn't get a lot of classroom management skills while in grad school. I felt like I learned that more in my student teaching experience. But I don't know that you can really teach that in a grad class. Like, you have to just live it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, because that was definitely one of the things that I saw was different from my grad school experience. Like I said, I didn't get a lot of pragmatic discussions. I got a lot of theory, and this is what will work, what should work. But the reality is you're not doing theory in class. You're talking with actual people. You're dealing with actual issues that students have. You're dealing with apathy. You're dealing with lack of engagement. You're trying to figure out how you can apply your own personality to the class. So a lot of times, theory is just that. It's just theory. Are there any particular projects or activities that you felt worked well this year?
I liked our field trip that we did. That was a good project. There was a project that we recently did on water quality at the school. We had a huge water problem with the school. I think last year the students were telling me where it got mixed in with the sewage, and it was a terrible thing. There was like bacteria in the water. They couldn't drink out of the fountains. They couldn't use any of the water in the bathroom. They had to, if they wanted to drink water, the school had to provide them with filtered, bottled water in the cafeteria. So if anyone had to leave the classroom to get water, they had to go to the cafeteria to get their own water. So we did a water quality assay, and I thought it was pretty exciting. And I think they wanted it to be contaminated. They just wanted it to be contaminated. They wanted to show the school that the water's still contaminated, because none of the students actually still trusted the water. Mm-hmm. I felt that it could have been more interesting. I felt like they could have had more or different hypotheses than what I was giving them. Sometimes when I give a project, I give them a model example, right? Like what I expect it to look like. Not the exact same thing that they're doing. I don't know, maybe of a different report or something, of a different kind of experiment. But it should look like this. I want the report to look like this. You should have a hypothesis that looks like this, that's this detailed, if this happens, then this, and this will happen. And we had a lot of different things that we were testing. I felt like they could have made better hypotheses than what I gave them. They were very simple. I think that the water is going to be good. I think the water quality is not going to have, I think the water is not going to have any lead in it. But they didn't tell me, why. It could have been more exciting, I think.
And oddly enough, that jumps into the next question of, are any particular projects or activities that you feel could be revised or even omitted the next time around?
Omitted the next time around? Let me see if I'm going to omit anything. I'll probably omit some things from my AP class when I run it next year. Mm-hmm. Just some things I feel like we did it just to have a lab run that day. It didn't necessarily correlate with anything that we were doing, but we were just doing a lab in general. It was a critical thinking lab, sure. I guess I could bend it that way. The purpose of doing that lab was critical thinking. Mm-hmm. But I probably would admit it, or maybe move it somewhere where it was more relatable or it had a better correlation with content.
You recently acquired a job as an instructor at St. Francis, which is a university. Mm-hmm. What was different about that process and the high school search? And obviously we talked about this a little bit off.
We talked about this. Funny enough, both of those jobs I don't remember applying to. The difference in interview I felt like the high school one was a little bit more, they were looking for different things. They were looking for how we're going to use technology in the classroom. How is your relationship to students? If a student was doing this, what would you do? How do you, if a student is not doing so well in your class, what are you going to do? Are you going to outreach to them? Are you going to reach out to the parents? And they want you to reach out to the parents, by the way, in high school. So if a student is getting a D or F, they expect you to make outreaches to not only the student to see what's going on with them, also make either some kind of contact with the parent, whether it's a phone call or an email telling them like, hey, this is what's the progress of your student. Let's work together, and and tell them why they're getting this grade. They have low test scores. Tell them to come see me. Tell them to, if they have any questions about the study guide, come see me. They're not handing in their homework. Please see that they're handing in their homework. They're missing a lab report. Something like that. Something that affects their grade. The university, they were looking more for, I think they were looking more of what fits my degree versus in the high school. The high school, like I said, they've given me a variety of classes outside of my degree, whereas the university, they tried to pair up the classes available with what I knew and graduated with. So that was a big difference. When I had a meeting with the dean, she was, I think, more excited that I was a high school teacher, and since this class is a freshman class, how I'm able to bridge the gap between students who maybe are struggling or are not as engaged in research, being a freshman at a college university level, and me teaching seniors who are on their way out of there trying to get into college or university. So I felt like she was more excited about that. The dean was talking about the wellness of students, giving them support versus, us in high school. In high school, we go after them. We try to give them everything that we can. Where in college, it's more like, here are the things that are available to you. I'm not going to follow up on you to do this kind of stuff. I'm just going to tell you where to go for it. I'm not going to really pressure you or really be on your back on you getting this done. So those are the kind of differences in my experiences in speaking with administrators at the high school and administrators at the university.
And that's actually really good insight because if anyone is looking to apply, those are the things that you could potentially look for. And the reality is, in a lot of collegiate settings, because certain turnover tends to be more rapid because they are hiring more adjuncts or more part-time instructors, that a lot of times the process is very quick. They don't necessarily give you a lot of background. If they feel you're a fit, the interview process isn't necessarily very long. And Kerry brings up a couple of really good points that in high school, your expectation is to definitely have a more serious attachment to student success. Whereas college student success is something that's sought after, but at the same time, they also look at students more as adults, where this is their opportunity to be proactive. The onus is more on them, so they have to take the responsibility, and if they're failing, they have to seek out a counselor. However, certain schools like COD, where I work at, they are creating a more sort of pathways discussion, which is essentially getting more counselors to kind of curate a more high school-like atmosphere, maybe, where they want students to be more streamlined, but it also requires counselors to seek out students and kind of guide them more. Whereas before, as Kerry brought up, a lot of it was more student orientation. And when I was in college, that was the same way. If you wanted to figure out what you wanted to do, you had to go seek it out. In reality, colleges don't care how much or how many classes you're taking because it's a business. If you're going to take 50 classes before you figure out what your major is,
go for it.
Yeah, exactly. They want you to take as many classes. And that's just a little secret that I don't know if I'm going to keep in the podcast or not. Maybe I will. As someone who is not too far removed from being a student herself, what are some of the biggest differences you noticed in how students learn today opposed to when you were in college, which was not too long ago, or even in high school?
Kids nowadays will find every loophole to get around doing whatever you tell them to do or ask them to do. They will say it's group work. Most of the time they have a productive group. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes it's your turn to do the lab today. So 3 of them will sit around and maybe give a little input, but the majority, one person is doing the work. I don't know that, I can't remember in high school if I did group work like that. I know that in college, our lab groups were, I don't know if it's just kind of students that I was paired up with, but we divided our work evenly. We were in and out of lab, like the first one's in, first one's out. We just got our labs done, we got our lab report done, and we were out of there. And we worked well that way. I don't know that my students get it, that if you work together, you will get it done faster instead of having one person do it. Because then we could do something else. There's always more things that we could do, and I don't think that they want to do anything more than what the minimum they are required to do for that day.
Yeah, it's funny, and I forgot who I was talking about with this, but in reality, when group work is done correctly, you are actually doing less than if you were doing it individually.
Exactly.
If you do it right, group members should divide it up evenly. And here's the thing, for successful group work versus unsuccessful, you can't always control who's going to do what in a group. But there are different ways to make group work, individuals in the group accountable for different things. Obviously, it's going to require you to do a little more legwork. But if that's really what you want to do, it's something we will talk about in another podcast for a different day. But at the same time, group work today is the same as it was in any field for the last few centuries. There's always going to be, as I like to use the construction example, the one person who's holding up the stop sign and having people drive past. You know you don't need a person to hold the stop sign. You can get a post for that. But someone's getting paid to hold a stop sign. Well, there's actually people doing real construction work. So there's going to be group members like that. It's just part of the game. But again, like I said, there are ways to make individuals more accountable, but you will have to put in a little more time.
I feel like I probably should just give them more work to do, because I think if I give them the amount of work you need to do in a class that one person could do, they'll probably figure out, oh, you could probably get this done in 40 minutes.
Right.
If I give them something that really requires 4 people to divide it up to get it done in 40 minutes, then they'll be like, well, we have to split this up.
Yeah.
We have to split this up. There's no way we're going to get it done.
Yeah.
So I might have to give bigger projects to tackle that.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, is that if you give something, a project or an activity that is truly impossible to do by one person in a certain amount of time, it would require other people to do that sort of work. And the reality is, if you get students to do the work, eventually they will be held accountable to themselves, where if students realize that another student isn't doing as much work, they'll vocalize it at some point if they honestly feel like the weight is getting too heavy. But you have to make them feel like that responsibility is on them. What was the most impressive thing you saw from your students in your first year?
I'm impressed that they don't keep secrets. What I mean is, like, if I give a test to this section, they're going to tell the other section what's on the test. And so how do I feel about that? Like, the second class always has the advantage. So how do I feel about that? Do I make another test? Do I give them the same test in a different order? But then they already know what's on it. So do I give them a different test altogether? The first time I gave my APES kids, my AP Environmental kids, the quiz consisted of multiple choice and a free response. I told them that my first section, I didn't make the free response for you guys, so I'll just give it to you next class. So then they told the next section that they didn't get the free response that day. So my next section, of course, they were like, well, since they didn't get a free response, could we not do it this time? And of course, by that time, I already made the free response. So since the first section told the second section what was going on, I had made the FRQs already. And I was going to decide to give 2 sections the same FRQ, the free response question. But once I found out that the second section knew that the first section didn't get the FRQ, and I told them not to say that they didn't get the FRQ. Now that I know, I'm going to make another FRQ for them. And now the same FRQ that probably the second section told the first section what it's going to be on, they're not getting the same FRQ. So I'm impressed that they will try to help each other out in that way.
And it's funny because as much as students are a collective, they are also different class by class and by certain age groups or settings. That seniors in high school have a certain mentality that since they're on the way out or they're at a certain point, they have a certain hierarchy, they feel a certain way. Because when they're freshmen in college, you don't always get the same sort of attitude. You're not going to get the same type of student as you would a senior in high school, even if they are the same age. They just went from high school to college, but it's still a new playing field. They're meeting new people, and they have a different understanding of how the structure works. And it was interesting that you bring up the idea of the impressive feat that they're not able to keep secrets, because I do feel that students, when they feel like they have a one-up on you, they either feel like, oh, I got it, this is good. But in reality, most of the time, we don't really care. Like, if you do, that's great. But by exploiting it, you give us a reason to change. If you never say anything, we wouldn't do it. Now, in terms of the quizzes that you brought up, it was interesting because I talk about this with my colleagues all the time. It's sleight of hand sometimes when we want to trick our students. So, for example, I have a math colleague who has the same test, but he color codes different sheets of paper and he puts different letters on them. So they assume they're getting different tests. But the reality is it's the same test. So if going forward you ever think, if you tell one class you guys are getting the A and B tests, then afternoon class is getting C and D because someone opened their damn mouth and decided to think they could get a one-up on me, now you guys ruined it for everybody else. But in reality, you're given the same test. You don't make it harder for yourself, but at the same time, you also give them a reason to think maybe we shouldn't try to put one over on our teacher.
There was another one that they did. There was when we put things in Canvas, this thing that we have, I could put my quizzes on there, and it could, random order the answers. But you have to put them in there. So you put them in there, and the first slot for A is always the correct answer. And you have to go and actually hit an option to shuffle the answers. So I didn't shuffle the answers on the last quiz that I gave them. And as I'm moderating this quiz, some students, the valedictorian, is taking the appropriate amount of time. It looks like you're reading every question and you're selecting the answer. Some students have went through the quiz in like 8 minutes. I'm like, did they get it through in 8 minutes? Oh, yeah. I didn't shuffle the answers. I only realized I didn't shuffle the answers when the second section had finished the quiz even faster than those students who had went through and realized that all of the answers were A. So I've been thinking of this whole entire break, because I have a final to give them, to push in all the answers, the first maybe 5 of them, 6 of them A, and then the rest of them different ones.
Favorite and least favorite educational moment of your first year or first semester? If you don't have a least favorite, that's not a bad thing. It means that things were relatively enjoyable, or they were all enjoyable. But if you also don't have a favorite.
That also feels like there's no room for improvement, though, if you don't have a least enjoyable day.
Well, it doesn't mean that you can't improve. It just means that maybe you just didn't have a bad time.
There was a time, I'll start with my least favorite day first. It was in my astronomy class, and they were getting really, really talkative. I don't know what day it was. It must have been a Friday, and they were talking a lot. And I just got really aggravated with them. It's like, guys, we got shit to do. I don't swear in my class. Mm-hmm. We have things to do, and you guys are really, really talkative today. And we have other things we got to do. And then in that class, it's a little bit challenging. That class is always fun because I have students in there who are 97% students. They are in there, they pay attention, they ignore all of this outside talking. And then I have students where I have to constantly see what they're doing. Where are you at? Did you go past question 5? You were on question 5 last time I came around and do rounds. You're still on question 5. What are you doing? So I have students who are like that, and then I have students who I don't have to check on at all. I have to go by, you're not on the same question as you were when I last stopped by. That's fantastic. Do you have any questions? No? All right, great. Then I have other kids where I have to really okay, what are you doing? Okay, read this question. Maybe if you read it, you'll start getting somewhere.
Yeah.
So Yeah, least favorite is when one of my classes where I felt like I was getting somewhere with them, I was starting to build a relationship with them, and I felt like they were not being as respectful to me as they should.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of my least favorite days. But that was one occurrence from them. Otherwise, they're a great group of kids. Favorite day was when I think it was on a day where it was like an assembly schedule day, and we had given like a quiz. I had given a quiz or something, and the rest of the time was theirs because I wasn't going to start anything new. And it was a Friday. It was assembly. I think we just sang Disney songs all day in class. And I had a couple of kids who were like in theater, or a couple of kids who were like in band or in musical or something like that, and we just sang Disney songs all day.
It's definitely a nice break from teaching.
I mean, we did work.
Yeah, you know, the reality is though, you know, you're in school. It's like a job. You're there 5 days a week, and there's gonna be times when in any job you need just a little bit of an escape, even if it's momentary, to just, you know, not go insane. I mean, it's very easy to break down, and this is something that a lot of teachers do go through, and why they are stressed out, why they do get anxiety, why they do dread going to class, because not every teacher has that wherewithal and has that temperament to continue on. And it breaks a lot of teachers sometimes, especially if they feel like they can't get through to their kids, if they feel like they're being taken for a ride, if they feel like they're being abused in certain ways to certain degrees. So these are very real things, and it's tough sometimes because not every teacher is as lucky to always have some of these occurrences not happen to them. But there's a lot of us, even the best teachers, have to go through crappy days sometimes, and it just part of the territory. Any advice for first year teachers?
Don't sweat it. You'll have good days, you'll have bad days. And each day is a new day. You gotta go in like that. Each period is a new period. Sometimes. If the last period wasn't that great, good thing is you get to do it all over again. And in that passing period, if you felt like it wasn't that great, what are you changing over the passing period? Think about, what do I need to do? What could I do? What didn't go great, and what could I do to change it and make it great? Maybe you can think about it in that 5-minute passing period. Think about it after school. Think about it for the next time you're going to do a lesson like that. It's okay. You're going to have days where it didn't go great, but you could always do better. There's always a next time.
That's good sound advice that I wish I had for myself when I first started. The reality is that you have to have a short-term memory with some of this stuff because you can't let it eat you up. And the truth is that, and we always joke about this, I always like to compare teachers to comedy writers because I feel that, say you have an 8 a.m. class, at least at the college level, you could have a great conversation, they eat it up, they laugh at your jokes, it's funny, you're the king of the world, and then your 9 a.m. class walks in and it's crickets. It's like pulling teeth. And you say to yourself, this lesson plan killed at 8 a.m., and then you start resenting your 9 a.m. kids, and you hate the world, and you hate yourself, and then 11 or 10 o'clock rolls around, and then they love it again, and you're high on the lesson plan again. So you have to just kind of go with the wave, and like Kerry said, don't sweat it. There's tomorrow. It's another day. Do better. Figure out what works. You can do it again next time. You can change things up. Find out what works. Build on it. Try to just transfer it to another lesson plan. See what doesn't work. Revise it. Get rid of it. Do something different. That's the joy of it. You are the creator. You can do these things.
It's ever changing.
yourself.
It's not always the same. That's what I like about it.
Absolutely. And you really have the capability of making it as unique as you want. That's one of the things that you have to remember, that yes, you might work for an institution, yes, you might have an administration, but at the end of the day, your classroom is unique to you.
It is your classroom.
You can make it as engaging, as exciting, as interactive as you want. And that was one of the things that I had to get over my first time around. Was my very first semester was I played it so close to the book that made me more anxious. And then when I started just to go outside the box and really work in the things I enjoyed and I liked, it made it much more enjoyable for me. And I liked it a lot better. So that's always something to keep in mind. Anything else you'd like to say before we close this out, I think we got a lot of good material
We
here.
got good material. Don't do all the work. Have your students do the work. If you're planning something, I don't know. There was a teacher that I had who was organizing something for Girl Scouts, and I know maybe this is not part of teaching, but it's part of organization. She had to have them. She was going to have them make turkeys. You know, Girl Scouts, 5-year-olds. They have turkeys out of their handprints and have like googly eyes and leaves for the tails. But she cut it all. She cut all of that out. I told her, like, why didn't you just have the kids cut it out for you? She's like, oh, that would have saved so much of my time. Yeah, let the kids do it. Don't plan it all yourself. Don't do it all yourself. Do the minimum stuff and then have them do it. Let them figure it out. Let them have the creative. I don't know, that's my last advice, I guess. Don't do everything. Let them do it.
You know, and
if you could let them do it, let them do it. Don't do it for them.
That's a great anecdote, and that's very sage advice from a first-year teacher, because that's something that even tenured teachers make mistakes on, is that they go beyond what they should. Your students aren't learning if you do the work for them. And whether it's a 5-year-old or whether it's a college student, you don't do them any favors by just giving them the answer or just getting it done for them. Let them figure it out. Let them struggle with it. Because if they don't struggle, they don't gain resolve and they don't learn anything. So at the end of the day, your job isn't necessarily to just give them the answer. Your job is to teach, and the best way to teach is by letting them learn. So thank you, Kerry, for taking part in this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully once all the cussing and everything else is either bleeped or edited out, we can get it posted. So we have enough material to probably just make this its own episode. Otherwise, if we attach it to episode 4, we're probably around an hour and a half. But then again, I've listened to podcasts that are, 4 or 5 hours long.
4 or 5 hours long.
Yeah, I know. We'll see you next time on Classroom Hacks. Hello again, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to remind you to check out duringofficehours.com. For most of us, the semester has just started. We're back into the groove of things, and maybe we're looking to try some new techniques out this semester. So duringofficehours.com has just what you're looking for when it comes to new activities, practical wisdom, creative projects, and outside-the-box methods. Why wait to try some of these great ideas out in your own class? Duringofficehours.com. Teach, share, learn.